welcome everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. And joining me is Edwin Eisendrath. He hosts a show right here in Lincoln Square. It's The Democracy Stupid, and that is the title of his Substack as well. Um, Edwin also hosts a radio show in Chicago on the weekends that you should definitely check out. He's the former CEO of the Chicago Sun-Times, and he is with us every Tuesday as we go through the news of the week. And this week, we practically we're going into several pages of news to go through. So we will see what we get to. Um, but thank you for being here again, Edwin.
Of course. Of course.
And actually, I had the pleasure of being on Joan Esposito's radio show on the network you're on in Chicago yesterday, and we talked about you a little bit because you had done an event with her on the
Yep.
media, and so that was just a pleasure to talk with her again.
Yeah, Joan's great. She does a great job.
Yeah. Um, well, why don't we start with what's been going on internationally
Mhm.
with Trump's wars, and that's how I'm going to refer to it because he campaigned as a president who had never started any wars. And he claimed repeatedly that Putin never would have invaded Ukraine. Netanyahu never would have gone into Gaza if he were president. But we're 9 months into his term. These wars are raging more than ever. So, do you feel like he does own these wars at this point, Edwin?
These are Donald Trump's wars. One is Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's war. The other is Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu's war. And uh, let's talk about that. I mean, he had two international summits in a week, one with Putin and then one with the leaders of Europe. These are very big deals, right? And what's the outcome? The outcome is that post those summits, Russia attacked Poland. Russia
Yes.
Russia is in the middle of war games in Moldova on the borders of Ukraine and of Poland. That Russia is more aggressive in Europe than they've ever been. They have this like the shadow docket in the Supreme Court. They have their shadow war where they do things like cut uh, uh, um, underwater cables or
Right.
in fact, attack the shopping center. They pay terrorists in Europe. This is going on. Russia is a terrible actor in the world, a terrible actor in the world. And Donald Trump has now refused to give the weapons for Ukraine to defend itself. Donald Trump is calling this Zelensky's war when Zelensky was attacked. I mean,
Right. I mean,
uh,
I'm not even sure if Donald Trump really understands how this war came about. I mean, because he does say things like Zelensky started this, and by no objective definition did that happen.
Donald Trump doesn't care how it came about. He cares about how he can use it today. And how he can use it today is all about whatever deal he thinks he's going to do with Putin. I mean,
Right.
clearly, I don't know whether it's Trump Tower in Moscow or it's some dossier that Putin has related to Epstein. Who knows, right? Whatever it is, Donald Trump's going to do his bidding. That's what he did for his first term. He got impeached for it in his first term. That's what he's doing now.
Right.
And the idea that a NATO country would have Moscow send drones over it, attack that country, and the country would invoke Article 4 of the NATO treaty, and
Right.
we couldn't be bothered to send anybody important to that meeting. The message that sends to Putin is, I got your back, kid. This
Right.
is Trump's war. And this
And
giant Ukrainian neighborhood in Chicago, and I go
oh,
talk to them. They absolutely understand this. They
yes.
understand that the United States for a long time, when Joe Biden was here, maybe he could have done more, but he protected Ukraine. He pushed back on Russia. Russia suffered enormous losses in their effort to gobble up Ukraine. Now we're not giving them the weapons. We're once again saying we'll slow walk the weapons. You can't use them for certain purposes, right? I mean, it's disgraceful. That is Trump's war, a war in Europe. And the
Right.
other one in Gaza, as we speak, um, uh, the Israelis are doing something appalling. This is no longer about October 7th.
No.
Defending Israel after October 7th, maybe Joe Biden, you could say he was supportive of that. So uh, that right, but we're past that. We are past
We're
whatever it had
almost
to do with
right. We're
that
almost
attack.
2 years into this war, and Gaza City is being leveled by
They're gonna
Israel right
destroy
now.
an entire city, and why? There was a meeting in the White House with Jared Kushner and a bunch of people, and the Washington Post, they gave us the PowerPoint of that meeting, and it was
Right.
all about, "We're gonna privatize Gaza, we're gonna turn it into a playground, we're gonna pay the people who are left alive to leave." I mean, absolutely horrid war crimes, human rights violations,
Ethnic
genocide,
cleansing.
whatever you want to call it, it's wrong. There is
Yes.
no moral compass. So, what do we not have from Donald Trump? In any way, foreign or domestic, by the way, is the ability to make peace. And
No.
this fool says he should get a Nobel Peace Prize. He
Yeah.
cannot make peace. Coercion is the only thing he understands.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, when he is going to Europe, Putin has stepped up his attacks in Ukraine. There is no respect for Donald Trump from Russia. They know that he is an incredibly weak president and that they can do what they want. And the message that the United States sent to NATO was, "We don't have your back."
That's true.
The old alliances don't count anymore. Donald Trump is on the side of those who create war, who engage in war crimes, and we are not we're not on the right side
We're
of
on the
any
wrong
of
side.
these international conflicts, which
We are
is
on the wrong
terrifying.
side. We have stood the United States now stands with tyrants against democracies,
Yes.
um, and that is the president declaring war on us.
Yes. And I mean, we may have witnessed the start of World War III last week, and this is not hyperbole. When you invade a NATO country's airspace, that is what you're threatening. And there have been various reports, especially in European newspapers, about them preparing for a potential ground war in Europe. That should terrify us all.
It's unconscionable and it's also unnecessary, right?
Yes.
But we're here because of Donald Trump's failed leadership. Because Marco Rubio is a I don't know what he is, but he's certainly not a statesman.
No.
Right? I mean, he's wandering around the Middle East now saying, "Oh, well, maybe it's too late for a deal." Okay, whatever.
Which is incredible because,
But I won't give a visa to anybody who is critical of Charlie Kirk internationally. Like, oh,
that's his priority as
that's really the
Secretary of State.
yeah, that's
As
really our job. Yeah,
as these wars are raging, as Gaza is being leveled, as we're seeing the extreme hunger for children, sites that are completely unnecessary. They are created by Bibi Netanyahu, who also, like Trump, has been, trying to consolidate his power. This has been his great way to stay in power because he's not popular with the Israeli people. If he is out of office, he faces similar crimes of corruption that Trump did. So it's the same playbook, but the devastating effect on the Palestinian people just can't be overstated. And um, Donald Trump clearly does not care. Axios had a report that he did know about the attack that Netanyahu called in Qatar to go after
again, they
Hamas.
must have talked about it in the
Right,
meeting in the White House, right?
right,
Because
and
he had a
and he
plan.
denied it, but
Who cares what he says?
right.
Watch what he does. He had a
Right,
meeting in the White
exactly.
House to privatize the redevelopment of Gaza, to build a Riviera there where the Gazans who are left can lay some bricks and everybody else is paid to leave who's
Yeah,
left alive. And of course, they would have talked about their military plans. Of course, they would have. So
right,
it doesn't matter what he says. He's Donald Trump is guilty as Bibi Netanyahu. They share this war.
right.
Yeah,
And then, and not, I do not think this is an exaggeration. Then we have Donald Trump's growing war on his own citizens at home. And, in your home city of Chicago, where I'm from as well, last week there was a tragic incident at a routine traffic stop with a father who had just dropped off his kids at school, and he was killed by ICE. And sadly, this is not going to be the last incident because we see that, what's been happening in LA, National Guard troops in Washington, plans for Trump to now go into Memphis. this sort of state-sponsored violence is becoming, official policy.
Well, like the ICE raids, I want to be sober for a second and just like
Mhm,
at the moment they have the legal right to,
mhm,
to find people who are in violation of their status here, and I am so proud of Chicago for standing up to what they to for not let them do things they are not legally allowed to do, like
right,
send in the National Guard, like send in the Department of War, whatever he's calling it these days,
right,
but also in documenting everything ICE does to try and make sure that that they're limbed within the walls of the law. And Chicagoans
right.
are doing a great job. Now we had this incident um, where a man was shot and killed. ICE initially reported that they stopped a car, that the driver tried to get away, that he struck an ICE officer, dragged him, but the officer shot him and killed him. I find it barely credible that you can be being dragged by a car and somehow pull out your weapon and shoot the driver, right? But
Yeah,
that's what they're saying. And
right.
and and look, I live in a city where over the course of my lifetime, the police who are and by and large good people in the police, but
Yeah,
we've had some bad apples and some terrible things have happened in this town, like Laquan McDonald, right?
mhm,
We have learned that when you send armed people into neighborhoods, it is difficult and terrible things happen. And and how do you hold anybody accountable? America's learned that police forces can't police themselves. They often
right,
vary things. So we have civilian oversight boards. We have
right.
some external eyes on them. And this is enormously important for ICE. It does not exist. We need to to build this because what will happen is they will kill more people, they will
Yes,
cover it up, and America will reject them entirely. And
right.
that, that creates other really dangerous situations.
Right. I mean, when you go into communities and you have a bunch of masked men, masked people who don't are told they don't have to show any sort of identification, they can act with impunity. That's what they're going to do. And this is only the start because, as we know from Trump's budget that the Republican Congress passed, ICE will now be funded at the tune of $170 billion, which, is an incredible private police force at Trump's disposal. And we know very little about these new recruits and where they come from. You can imagine that perhaps some of the J6ers who have been pardoned are, part of this police force, and that's why they don't want to show their faces. But what that means in communities that they're going into, like Chicago, is that, there's not the trust that you might have with a local police force where, there's been an effort in a lot of places like Chicago.
Build trust.
Um,
And it's
to
still hard. It is
Right.
still
But to build relationships between
Yep,
the community and the police so that you can more effectively fight crime and keep people safe. That trust doesn't exist.
doesn't
Uh,
exist. And
and I go ahead.
I mean, uh, y on top of the, very high likelihood that they're J6ers who are being picked up and put into ICE, we know that they're paying these bounties and getting people to leave local police forces and join ICE. So the
Right.
effort is actually making America less safe. It's
Yes.
taking people from police forces and saying, "Forget the job you're doing protecting your community. Come over here and focus on getting the Koreans out of the auto plants that
Right. Go
we
down to
invited
Home
them into
Depot.
in
Ri
Georgia," right?
y
It's insane.
right.
I mean, that's like
Absolutely.
insane and dangerous for the country, terrible policy. I mean, the reality has as I say, is a way of intervening. No matter how crazy some of these people on the right are, they have to buy coffee, right? And the price is like crazy, right?
Right.
They're gonna experience. Wait a minute, what do you mean there are no vegetables? What I because they're that's happening in places, and they're gonna see. What? Wait, I don't understand. I'm farming. What do you mean I can't sell a single soybean to China? Like, not
Right.
one, they're not buying any. It's terrible for farmers. And
Absolutely.
and rural hospitals are we now know several are starting to shut down because of their leadership. And this is, by the way, before the full effect of BBB, their terrible bill, gets into right because they
Right.
knew they put off some of the worst parts till after the midterms, and already the effect is simply terrible,
Right.
terrible.
But there's a huge trickle down effect that's going to come, even before some of the most draconian healthcare cuts that we're seeing, because so many state budgets are dependent on federal dollars, and those dollars are being choked off. Here in Michigan, we still don't have a budget because we have a Republican House where it's led by a Donald Trump like figure, and he wants to hold the process totally hostage. And this is just the first battle. Next year is going to be even worse as we're going to be, tens of millions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars short. And that's just Michigan. In Illinois, you've got an even bigger budget. This is going to happen around the country. And, compounded with the fact that you have ICE essentially raiding local police forces that are not going to have money to pay them, you're going to create all of this trickle down effect of us being less safe, having less resources, less hospitals. Everything is getting worse, and everything didn't need to get worse.
No, in fact, things were getting better, and then this guy took it and is totally incompetent. And I mean, Kash Patel is testifying, and now I got
I
to
hear
see a
he's
little
doing
bit of it.
great.
I got to see, yeah, really great. He said, um, American cities are awash in crime. It's the worst it's ever. So we rushed resources out, and you know what? Violent crimes at a 10-year low. Like,
Right.
like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Like you're sending the troops in because crime is terrible. Crime's at a 10-year low. 10-year low. Oh, you think you did that in this last week? Yeah,
Well,
it's
I want to
nuts,
get
Susan.
I
They're
want to get
completely disconnected from reality.
absolutely. And I want to get your take because last week Trump made a splash by saying, "Oh wait, before we go into Chicago, we're going to send troops into Memphis."
Hmm.
Now I'm not in Illinois, but to me that seemed to be a tip that J.B. Pritzker, your governor's, muscular response and saying, "We do not want you here. You do not have the authority." That Trump was backing down.
Well, I mean, I give JB a lot of credit. I'm very happy about what he did. But there's also, we had some court rulings that said, he didn't have to, after LA, he didn't have the free hand to do what he wants to do. In
Although
Memphis,
the
the
Supreme
governor
Court,
is
the
inviting
Supreme
him.
Court did say that ICE has the right to racially profile.
Yeah, well, and ICE is here, and ICE is racially profiling,
Right.
right? So what they have the right to do, they're going to do. But what they don't have the right to do, we are going to stop them from doing. Absolutely stop them, and it will be our elected officials who are united, even though they don't generally agree about a lot. They are united in trying to do this, and so are the people, which is just and not shy to get out of our houses and to stand up and to protest and to take pictures and to say, you're going to come here. We are going to take pictures of your face. We are going to know who you are under that mask. And we're going to tell everybody. And Christy Nome says that's a crime. I'm sorry. Wrong.
What happened to the First Amendment? I
Well,
have
she
to.
says it's harassing law enforcement and
Mm,
it's somehow illegal, right? Because it's like doxing now. She says while her goons are doxing people all over the country.
right. Yeah, it's First Amendment for me, not for thee. So one thing that you and I have talked about before is that we believe that Trump is actually in a very weak position as president, and so he is not to take away from the absolutely frightening autocratic policies that he's pushing, but that doesn't come from a place of strength. That right now, this comes from a place of weakness. If you look at the recent polling that we were looking at right before we came on in The Economist, I mean, he
Hmm.
is underwater with every group, but white people where it's split 50-50.
Hmm.
He is underwater in most states. His numbers on the economy have cratered. His numbers on immigration have cratered, which was his best issue.
Yep.
These are really sobering numbers for somebody who
Yeah.
has to face the American electorate, which is why next year he's been, rushing out these gerrymandering plans in red states because he's terrified of facing voters fairly.
Yeah, I think they'll do everything to cheat, everything they can to cheat. We have every reason to believe that's what they've done before. We have every reason to believe that, and we have to work hard to protect ourselves, and including protecting the right to vote in communities where he's going to have ICE folks surrounding polling places. Just horrendous. But I think you're right in saying this comes from a place of weakness. I think it's also interesting to think about whether he's in this place of weakness because of these actions. I mean, after all,
Absolutely.
he won the election. I'm not pretending he didn't,
Right.
but afterwards, it's the decisions he's made that are driving his poll numbers down.
Yes.
Americans don't like dictators.
No.
We don't like it when a president switches sides in a war. When a country supports one party in a war, like in Ukraine, and he switches sides to be with Putin, Americans don't like it. Americans don't like that we have to pay a whole lot more for his weird tariffs. We don't like it that he doesn't actually have any reasons for his tariffs, that he's using them to punish political enemies or to put a high tariff and then take it off if somebody buys his cryptocurrency. Because Americans really don't like corrupt politicians who line their own pockets.
Right.
I mean, we just don't like that stuff. And so his behavior is driving his poll numbers down. His leadership is driving his poll numbers down. What our lived experience is in his country is driving his poll numbers down. And his reaction to that is to double down and do the same thing. You
Right.
know,
And to crack down on dissent. I mean, that has
which
been
Americans don't like.
right. But, when JD Vance, endorses doxing people and he's saying there should be no unity in this country after the murder of Charlie Kirk, they are trying to sow division because they're of their weakness. And,
Yeah, and by the way, Susan, having that podcast out of the White House right afterwards is like the clearest violation of the Hatch Act you can imagine.
right,
And of course, if we had an attorney general and if we had rule of law in the United States, the vice president would be defending himself against charges of violating the Hatch Act right now. But of
right.
course, we don't. We have a weaponized Justice Department. Also, something Americans don't like,
Yes.
right?
And for JD Vance to be sitting there, um, kind of cosplaying as president, taking over Charlie Kirk's podcast, again, to me, this spells weakness because we know that Trump's health does not appear to be great. All you have to do is compare him during his first term to his second term. It's striking. And
Well, I,
especially,
I looked at him I looked at some video recently, just after 6 months ago, just after or 7 months ago, just after inauguration. I mean, he is declining, no question. He looks terrible.
absolutely,
Yeah.
people were raising questions about Biden's health. Trump is no spring chicken.
Yeah.
We did not elect someone who was 50 years old, and Trump is clearly, not doing nearly as many events as he has. JD Vance is trying to fill that gap, but I feel like with this tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, once again, JD Vance, Trump, they all see this as an opportunity to push further division, to push their agenda. And for Vance, he wants to, be the heir apparent to Trump. He does not have the personal loyalty that he has, but now he's trying to wrap himself in Charlie Kirk's,
Well, look,
organization.
he's wrapping himself in clothes that fit him, right? Because
Mhm.
Charlie Kirk rhetoric. Now, again, like you, I hate political violence. I
Absolutely.
prayed he would survive. He didn't. And if this guy is convicted of killing him, he deserves to never see the light of day again. It's a
Mhm.
terrible thing that happened. On the other hand, the views that Charlie Kirk espoused during his life, I mean, he is a murder victim. He is not a martyr, right?
Right.
So his views, right? Absolute racism, absolute hatred of the idea that a woman can have an actual job, um, absolute hatred of immigrants. All of this stuff. If JD Vance wants to wear that coat, it fits him perfectly. The man who says his own constituents are eating their neighbors' pets, right? I mean, to lie and be a racist, be a thug, fits JD Vance. Let him wear that coat. America is not that country. And I mean, I know where's Donald Trump's rating now? How many people say he's okay? 39%. I'm shocked it's that high. But that
And
means that
that's about
there's
as low as his numbers have gotten.
and that means that more than 60% of the country knows better. Knows better. And that is with the right wing owning most of the media. And here we're doing our best to, create some alternatives, right? But, they're consolidating their hold over the media. They have it. This myth that there's great left wing leaning media in America is a complete lie.
Mhm.
So the fact that 60% of America knows better, despite this massive propaganda, all of this stuff, it's a very positive sign.
Yes. And I'll tell you what I think Donald Trump is most frightened of, and that is the release of the Epstein files. For sure. I mean, if it whenever he or Carolyn Levitt are asked a question, they turn a new shade of white. This is not a topic that they want to hear about, and I think it's very significant that Republican Representative Thomas Massey's discharge petition is inching closer to the 218 votes that he needs,
Yeah,
and he will probably get it. It only takes, I think, probably one more Republican. And this should just be a bipartisan issue of transparency. And certainly this was something that Trump and many Republicans were calling for, and abruptly flipped their position.
yeah. I mean, we should get the public wants this. The victims need it.
Yes.
Let's do this honestly and have some closure instead of all of this secrecy. It's just not in anybody's interest. And of course, they've lied. They've lied. They've lied. Pam Bondi lied. Trump lied. I mean, I imagine he's over in Windsor Palace now, yucking it up with Andrew, right? About the good times they all had together.
Uh,
Just
yeah.
disgusting, right? Just disgusting.
It is such it is just an utterly stomach churning example of power run amok and of the utter dehumanization of women and girls, by elites who felt like they would never face any accountability. And this would be some accountability. And
Yeah,
and that is what the survivors and what we're all owed.
yeah. And you know what? I think there are I don't know about the Republican men, but the Republican women were all in before the election when the Republicans said, "This terrible thing is happening. We're going to protect you. We care about this. We are going to get to the bottom that these powerful men shouldn't be abusing women and getting away with it." And Joe Biden is hiding the secret. Well, guess what? Joe Biden isn't hiding any secret anymore. This is you that hiding the secret, Donald. You and you alone.
Absolutely. And I don't think this is something that he can hide from, because this has been his fight for years and years. This has been a central tenet of MAGA. And so I wish Thomas Massey and Rokana all the luck in pursuing this. And I would, I have to say, Chuck Schumer, I think you and I have both been very critical of him, but he did attach a resolution trying to stop some of Trump's nominations, and he tried to get the release of the Epstein files. And I say more of that.
More of that. Yep. I mean, the rest of the Democrats around the country have learned tough. We've learned to fight, and not to fight the way the Republicans do because we're not them, but to fight hard and to fight with heart and to fight with love of our neighbor, not hate of our neighbor. It leads to a different kind of battle. Our folks on Capitol Hill are maybe a generation behind, and I don't mean they're old. I mean their thinking is that this is a normal time and these are normal negotiations with the other side of the aisle, and that's just not fit for the moment.
Do you think that we will see a government shutdown at some point this year?
Yes, I do. Um, I think the Republicans are going to demand that Democrats go along with some things they're not going to go along with. I mean, Lindsey Graham's got an interesting idea, like let's have real sanctions on Russia, but for that we need your votes on everything else.
Mhm.
And I think Democrats have to say back to him, "We want real sanctions on Russia. We don't believe there's nothing in here that believes you'll do it." I mean,
Right.
you've not been in good faith. I think one of the great businessmen, a couple generations ago in Chicago, founded enormous wealth, big company. He said, "You cannot do a good deal with a bad partner. Can't do a good deal with a bad partner.
And
Donald Trump is a bad partner.
Donald Trump has been a bad partner his entire life.
Yep. Yep.
That's all he knows.
Well, I mean, ask the Koreans, right? He said he had a deal with them. He said they're going to invest a whole lot of money in the United States. Then they did, and they sent workers over to get it done, and he put them in chains
Yeah,
and sent them back to Korea. You should read the press in Korea. I had Google Translate look at some of the things they're writing. They've had it with us, South Korea, had it with us, right? So, like, okay, where are they going to go? China. Just,
absolutely. And
right?
that I think is one of those stories that has gotten lost is how many of our actions with tariffs, with Trump's actions internationally are just making China so much stronger than it had to be. And, I think another
And the
thing.
answer is all of them.
Yes. And
Um,
be and with China feeling empowered, I think we all need to keep an eye on Taiwan
well,
because
honestly, I've thought a lot about this, Susan. If you were China, you would not touch Taiwan right now because
oh,
your
definitely.
goal is to keep that fool in the White House.
Yes.
Even as important as Taiwan is, if we can weaken America to the as Donald Trump does every day, they get
Yes.
more and more options. They've waited a long time for Taiwan. You know what? They're a culture of patience.
That
Um,
uh, fair.
Right? They're not like us. They don't need to have the result tomorrow.
Right. I
They
mean,
can
what
plan. They can wait. If they know that if Donald Trump stays in office, America will get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And then when they do take Taiwan, it's like, yeah, see,
that's a very fair point because their position is quite different than Russia. Russia's economy continues to collapse.
yes,
Vladimir Putin feels like he is on borrowed time. And so that's why he keeps pushing the envelope with more and more destruction in Ukraine, with going into Polish airspace and perhaps others, with some unconfirmed reports,
yep,
because he knows that he needs to act so that he stays in power. Whereas China, their economy keeps getting stronger with Trump in the
yes,
White
of
House.
course. I mean, by the way, Russia is Putin is on borrowed time, and the person who's lending in that time is Donald Trump.
Yes,
Yeah, it's disgraceful.
it
Just
absolutely is.
yeah.
Well, Edwin, I know we got to less than half of our list of things to talk about.
Wait, what? We're out of time? No, what happened?
It's like this every week. Hopefully, it will be a little less of a violent week. We can all pray this week. But you will want to come back on Thursdays at noon Eastern when Edwin has his show. It's the Democracy Stupid right here on Lincoln Square. He has just fabulous discussions with people. It's really a show not to miss. And
Thanks,
so
Susan.
thank you for being here.
Yep.
I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us this week.
Take care.